Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Midlife Crisis, the show where I explain every single DC event, or at least the universe-spanning ones that are massive crossovers, in chronological order. Last week, we started DC 1 million, and this week we're going to be continuing DC 1 million. This is week 2 of DC 1 million, so we're going to be doing another 10 issues or so involving some tie-ins. So we're starting off with Starman issue 1 million. But before we get into that, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like the video, and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified for future videos. You know, every subscription is huge help. Every view just means the world, you know. I've recently hit 9 subscribers, which the fact that 9 people, you know, want to subscribe, like, are interested in what I'm saying enough to subscribe it's incredible. So yeah, let's get straight into Starman 1 million, written by James Robinson, the guy who has been writing Starman in the 90s, with art by Peter Snejbjerg? I hope that's how you pronounce that. It's really hard to pronounce. And Wade von Grawbadger. So as we know from previous issues and previous tie-ins, Starman is a traitor. We know that. Like, the future Starman. The one from the 453rd century is a traitor. And, but nobody else other than Green Lantern knows that. And so this issue kind of explores not only the future Starman's past, but also, because he's on Earth, his connections to the other Starmen, which is really interesting. This is a really good issue. So it begins with future Starman's... His name will be revealed later, and so, like, his real name, so I'll be able to finally start referring him to his actual name instead of just Future Starman. But we start off with Future Starman's space station in space, which looks a lot like Starro. And then it's revealed that it actually has a mind of its own, and it talks about Future Starman as if he is the love of its life, and that he is like its father, like a father to him and to it, and a son to them, and a husband to them. And I'm starting to think, like, is this the future version of Starro? Like, are we building up to the big reveal that this isn't just a space station? This is what happens to Starro. Starro becomes Starman's space station. It's not revealed in this issue if that's the case, but the fact that we've been introduced to his space station having intelligence, it's starting to skew more in that direction. And it's the same shape as a star. So, you know, specifically a starfish. So I'm starting to get that kind of vibe. The space station talks about how it's in this, like, it talks very highly of Solaris. In a way that it loves Solaris. It believes that Solaris is responsible for the planets around it thriving. So we're starting to get a little bit more of an understanding as to why Starman is teaming up with Solaris. But we'll learn more about it later as well. So we come to Opal City, which Ted Knight lives in. Ted Knight is the original Starman. And Ted Knight is in a battle with a villain known as Deathbolt. Deathbolt has been hired by somebody to assassinate Ted. It might matter to later Starman issues. It doesn't really matter to this one all that much. It just serves as a way to introduce the new Starman to Ted Knight. So future Starman shows up and scares Deathbolt away because he's so powerful. He uses his cosmic rod to fight Deathbolt, and Deathbolt flees. And Ted's just like, I'm glad you saved my life, boy, but, like, I wish you didn't chase him away because I want to know where he is and I want to find out who hired him because somebody hired him. He's an assassin. And that's when Starman, future Starman, when he talks to Ted, he calls him father, and Ted is like, I just noticed you called me father. What's that about? And future Starman is like, you're not literally my father, but you're my fourth father, as in, like, I am a descendant of yours. And he takes his helmet off, and he's like, my name is Ferris Knight. My great-grandfather was a Starman, was the first Starman of our time. There hadn't been a Starman, because Ted Knight is like, wow, there's been Starmans for so long? Like, wow, that's insane. And Ted Knight is like, well, there wasn't a Starman for like 300 centuries, but my great-grandfather got attacked by space pirates, and he landed on a planet, and then something crash-landed on the planet, and he thought it was like an escape pod or something, but it turned out that it was this. It was what you call a cosmic rod. I call it the Quavat. And so my great-grandfather used it to kill the Kleinsiders, which is what they call pirates in the future, and then he became Starman. And he says, like, and then he passed the legacy on to my mother, or onto, like, his son, who passed it on to my mother, and she became Starwoman or Starman. I don't know if everyone's called... It's assumed that no matter what gender you are called Starman, because from what I understand, she was also called Starman. And then she passed it on to Ferris. And so they decide to go out for a little bit of a walk. And that's when Ferris starts talking to Ted Knight about the fact that, like, not all of the Starmen in the future are heroes. Some of them are villains. Usually, like, it's guaranteed that at some point there's going to be a villainous Starman. And they all came from Jack Knight, who is Ted Knight's son, the current Starman. It turns out Jack Knight isn't going to be remembered in the future, because Ted asks him, like, is Jack Knight known as the most famous Starman in the future? And Ferris is like, no. Nobody in the future even remembers that Jack Knight is Starman, which is kind of messed up. Like, I feel bad for Jack. But Ted, people remember Ted in the future not as Starman, but as an amazing scientist. The other Starmen of note from the future are, like, Danny Blaine, Tommy Tomorrow 2, Liz Rue, and then he's like, and my grandfather, Kale Knight. And so he asks Ted, he's like, one of the reasons I came to see you is because I know that a long time ago you saw this green ore land on your planet, and I need it. And so Ted is like, oh yeah, I found, like, this green ore. I was fighting the icicle. Oh wait, no, wait a minute. I was fighting the killer wasp. And in the picture it has killer moth. So I don't know if the artist just got killer wasp and killer moth mixed up, or James Robinson got killer moth's name wrong and said killer wasp instead. But he opens up the box to reveal the green ore, and the green ore is kryptonite. And Ted's just like, what do you want with this anyway? And Ferris is like, I need to take it to Mars in your time so that it's ready to be used in the future. And he's like, but I can't really tell you why. Like, I need to put it on Mars so that it's for its greater destiny, and I can't tell you why. And Ted's just like, you can't say. I understand. I'm sure whatever you intend to do with it is for the right reasons. And Ferris looks at you and he's like, damn you. I can't lie to you. I don't know why. I'm not all I appear to be, or ever I'm more than I appear. And he's like, I'm Ferris Knight, Starman. I'm the defender of Solaris, the artificial sun. I'm a member of the Justice Legion, and I'm a traitor. And so it all comes out. It's a massive thing where he says, at one point, after I become Starman, I awoke to the power of evil because I don't care about being a hero. I didn't want to be a hero. My great-grandfather put it on his son and then forced it onto my mom, and then my mom, she enjoyed being a hero and fighting villains and stuff, and she forced it onto me. I didn't even want to be a hero. The only thing I enjoy about being Starman is all the women I get and all the rewards. But what I hate is helping people. And Ted's just like, well, you're sounding a lot like a villain. Maybe you're one of those villainous seeds you were talking about. And Ferris is like, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. I am a villain. I am a villain, and I enjoy being a villain. And the problem in the future is Superman. Solaris wants to kill Superman, and I'm going to help him, which is why I need the green ore. I'm going to put it in Mars so that Solaris can use the kryptonite to kill Superman in the future. And then he's like, and I hate you, Ted Knight. I'm going to kill you because you're the reason I'm Starman in the first place. You know, I hate being Starman, which means I hate you because you started all this. And so he's like, with that, and he destroys Ted Knight's massive telescope. It's like, you were looking through that, and that's the whole reason this started. And then he goes to kill Ted, and Ted's just like, look, I'm okay with dying. I'm ready for it. But after you've killed me, think about the rest of your actions. We're all tempted. Look into your heart. There's evil there. You've completely come to accept it. All I ask is for you to look for the good within you also. Don't deny it if you find it there. Accept that too. I'm proud of you, Ferris Knight. Not of what you're doing, but I'm proud of who you are. And Ferris Knight looks at him, and then he looks at Ted Knight's old Starman costume, and he looks back, and he's like, And then he drops Ted, and he flies away with the kryptonite. Oh no, he doesn't drop Ted. It's not revealed what happens to Ted, sorry. It's not revealed what happens to Ted. He looks back at Ted, and he leaves. And we don't get to find out what happened. We just see last shot of Starman leaving. No idea on whether or not he killed Ted. It's a pretty good it's a pretty interesting ending, because it's like, did he kill Ted? Did he not? Did he just leave? I'm sure I'm hoping we find out in this. I don't want to have to read Starman just to find that out, but I might actually do that in my own time just to see what happened. But yeah, that's the end of Starman issue 1 million. Incredible. I mean, it's James Robinson, so I was expecting it to be incredible. But he really did like an amazing job integrating this future Starman into the Starman mythology and have it be having him be a villain and making him truly despicable and hateful. Like, not every villain needs to be redeemable, and not every villain needs to be super complicated. It can be as simple as they're just a terrible person, and it's because they were forced to be a hero and they don't want to be, and so they just become a villain and they enjoy it. You don't need to be any deeper than that. But yeah, so that's the end of that tie-in, and the next tie-in that we're going to be looking at is Impulse issue 1 million. Another one that I'm looking forward to reading, because I like Impulse, and I've read some of the Impulse comics. This one is written by William Mesner-Loebs, who we know from his pretty long Flash run, and with art by Craig Rousseau and Barbara Kalberg. The story is Desperate Times a Million. So let's get into this, because it's very clear that this is going to be Impulse crossing paths with John Fox, and we've had some history with John Fox, so it'll be interesting to see some more of him in this event and see where it takes him. Okay, so Impulse 1 million deals more with Vandal Savage's recent plot established in DC 1 million issue 2, which is how he's sent it's confirmed that there are 4 Rocket Reds that Vandal Savage has launched, one of which has Roy Harper in it, one of which probably has Supergirl in it, one that we don't know who is in it, and the 4th one, it's confirmed in this, to have Jesse Quick in it. Superman and John Fox are dealing with the aftermath of the nuclear explosion, and it's future Superman, by the way. And future Superman tells John Fox to go and find Impulse and team up with Impulse because this is the Impulse tie-in and he has to do that. And John Fox doesn't want to because he knows Impulse and he knows that Impulse is a hard person to work with. So he heads off anyway because he has to, because he needs to be a hero. And he finds Impulse. And Impulse isn't keen on working with John Fox because he knows who John Fox is. He knows that he's the creep that tried to get Linda Park and tried to wipe Wally out of history and replace him. And John is like, we got to put our differences aside. We got to help each other because there is a rocket red that is heading straight for the city of Manchester, which is the city that you live in, Impulse, or like a city that you live near. And it's going to kill a lot of people, so we got to just put our differences aside, work together, and take it down. And then for some reason, I don't know why he does this. It doesn't really make much sense, but I guess William Mesner-Loebs had to be like, well, Impulse has to see the future at some point, right? Like, we're not in the future, but I want to show what the future looks like, so I'm going to come up with a reason for Impulse to do it. So John Fox gives him and Impulse these, like, memory devices that they put on their heads, and it makes it so that they can see what the future looks like, but they're still in the present. So it's like a hologram version of the future. So Bart gets to see what the future looks like without actually being there. And then the Rocket Red shows up, and Bart is like, wow, how did they get to the future? And John Fox is like, we're not actually in the future, Bart. We're in the present. And Bart's just like, this hurts my head. Like, jeez. And then Impulse ends up... I think the idea is that the devices that they're using to link each other's minds together allows them to link with Jessie's mind, and they manage to get inside of the Rocket Red that she's in, or at least like the mind of the Rocket Red, and see Jessie herself, and they see a bomb, which I guess represents the bomb that is the Rocket Red, and that they're hoping that if they deactivate the bomb, it'll free her from the Rocket Red. And so Impulse tries to pull the bomb apart, and he fails to do so. And then John Fox shows up and is like, hey, what's taking so long? And Impulse is like, we can't pull the bomb apart. Like, it's too hard. I tried, and it won't let me. And John is like, well, maybe Jessie's the one who has to pull the bomb, like, that has to deactivate the bomb, because she's the one in control of the Rocket Red without realizing. And Jessie is like, I can't do it. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, I can't do this. This is too... like, there's too much weight on my shoulders, you know? Saving millions of people? I can't do that. And John is like, you gotta trust me, Jessie. You can do it. Like, trust me. Trust the guy that tried to replace one of your closest friends who's almost like a brother to you. You know, trust me. Trust that guy. And Jessie's like, I'll trust you, John. After everything you've done, I'll choose to trust you. And she, like, grabs his hand. And her grabbing John's hand is the symbolism of her pulling the wires out of the Rocket Red. It turns out that when she grabs his hand, she's actually pulling the wires out. She pulls the wires out of the Rocket Red, deactivates the bomb and the suit, and then Impulse pulls her out of the suit. And they save the day. And Impulse is like, yay, we did it. We stopped the Rocket Red. We saved Jessie quick. And John Fox is like, it's not the time to celebrate yet because there's still 3 more Rocket Reds out there. So we got a lot more work to do. And that's it. That's the end of the tie-in. Overall, I think this tie-in was fine. Part of it I skipped over was just John Fox explaining to Bart what's happening, because we already know what's happening. I don't need to say it again. It's cool seeing Jessie Quick show up, but also she doesn't really do much. Like, she's just there to kind of, like... She's there because she's in the Rocket Red, and she saves the day at the end, but nothing... She doesn't really do anything else besides that, which is a bit of a bummer, because I like Jessie Quick. But what are you going to do? There's not really... Like, the situation that this comic was in... It made it hard for William to do anything super interesting, because it's like, oh, well, you gotta stop a Rocket Red. Let's do that. I'll try and somehow show the future, which he does, but it's just kind of random and confusing, where they're just like, oh, we got these devices that we put on our heads so that we can see the future, but not actually be in it. We're still in the present. That was weird. And, yeah, I don't know. The fun thing about this is that it seemed like John Fox just didn't want to be in this tie-in. The actual character didn't want to be here because he didn't want to team up with Impulse, which I think is funny. Also, what's really funny that I didn't mention it, but I'm gonna mention it now because it's funny. The virus that's been going around, I don't know why, but William Esnaloes was just like, "Oh yeah, Bart like got the virus, but like he's fine now." Like, Bart just mentions he's like, "I had a shower and those weird warts that were on me, like they're gone." And his friend is like, "Yeah, me too. They just fell off. We're not sick anymore." I guess I guess William just didn't want Impulse to be one of those characters that gets killed off in the event, and so he wrote it so that Impulse was like, he's fine, he's not sick, there's no way you can kill him off with this sickness or, you know, write him out of the event. I thought that was funny. I just thought it was funny how Impulse is just like, yep, not sick anymore. But yeah, that's that whole tie-in. The next tie-in that we're going to be reading is one I'm really interested in reading because I forgot it was a tie-in to this. Green Arrow, issue 1 million. Written by Chuck Dixon, who I like some of Chuck Dixon's work, but over the years, Chuck Dixon has proven to be a writer who I do not agree with in terms of personal beliefs and stuff. But it's unfortunate when there's a writer that you look up to or a writer that you like their work and they turn out to be a bit of a shitbag, but what are you gonna do? Yeah, written by Chuck Dixon with art by Frank Terran and John Staniski. So yeah, let's get straight into this. All Down the Years. That's the name of the story. So Green Arrow 1 million. At first glance, this just seems like any other tie-in where it's like, oh, it's just we're gonna see what, you know, the Green Arrows are like in the future. But it actually bears a little bit more importance on the Green Arrow series in general, with its ending, which I did not expect. I did not expect for it to set up something pretty important for Green Arrow. At the moment, Connor Hawke is the main Green Arrow because Oliver Queen has died. Connor Hawke is the son of Oliver Queen. He's become the new Green Arrow. He is currently meditating because Connor grew up with monks, and so he meditates a lot, and so right now he's visiting them, he's shaved his head, and he's meditating, and while he meditates, he sees a vision of what the future of the Green Arrows will be like. So there are 3 major key players in this story, and a 4th one that I won't reveal until later. We have Hawke, who is a descendant of either Connor or Oliver. It's never stated which it is. He looks like Oliver, but he was named after Connor, and because he looks a lot like Oliver, like, he doesn't have the same skin color as... But then again, like, Connor does not have the right skin color in this. He's got light skin, which isn't right. So I'm assuming that he's supposed to be Connor's descendant, because he's got, like, Connor's features. So yeah, we got him. And then we got Kanara, which is obviously a reference to Canary. She is the sister of Hawke. And then we have Grodchild, who is a descendant of Gorilla Grodd, and the rest of his, like, monkey empire. And Grodchild is half machine, half gorilla. Because at this point in the future, the gorillas have abandoned their old ways of being more like monkeys, and they've grown to be more like, just, they've given into technology and stuff. And Hawke actually eggs Grodchild on for this. And it was like, you're not even like a full gorilla anymore. You're nothing like your old descendants. And Grodchild is like, why would I ever want to be like those monkeys? Like, they were idiots. There's a reason they're not around anymore. It's all about survival and adapting. So Hawke and Kanara come into conflict with Grodchild. Kanara gets captured by Grodd, and Grodd wants Hawke to take him, like, to use what is called the astral shaft, which is a type of arrow that we won't get to see until towards the end of the issue. But he wants Hawk to use the astral shaft to do something for him. He's going to take Hawk somewhere to find somebody to use to find something to use the astral shaft on. It's revealed that Godchild wants to find the Fortress of Solitude because Prime Superman is currently in the Fortress of Solitude, which we know that from the Superman tie-in, so this takes place after that one. We'll get to see more about Superman in the Fortress of Solitude in his next tie-in, but this one kind of ties into it, so this takes place during that. So Superman is at the Fortress of Solitude. We don't get to see what he does there, but he does show up in this. So while they're flying, because they go into this flying machine that Godchild owns, and while they're flying in it, Hawk tries to kill Godchild, and Godchild is like, "You insolent fool, your arrows can't hurt me, I've got a robotic arm," and he just smashes the arrow away. Meanwhile, Kanara is being taken away by Grodd's chimps. And in their, she's at the base. I thought they were in a ship. She's actually at Godchild's base. And she breaks out. And by break out, I mean she just kicks one of the chimps aren't even watching her. And she just kicks one of them in the back and then jumps out, and they're like, get her! And then she jumps into the water, and they're like, she killed herself. But then it turns out she's alive, and that she's able to take control of the wildlife using her mind. And it makes you wonder, is there some kind of lineage connection between the Green Arrows and the aquatic people, the people of Atlantis at this point? Did their family lineage kind of intermingle, and so that explains why people in the Green Arrow family can control sea animals. It's assumed that they can control all nature with the we learn what this is because she shows up on a whale and it's kind of not explained how she can do this. We kind of learn what it is, but at the same time Chuck Dixon doesn't really explain what it is, so maybe we'll learn more about it in Aquaman 1,000,000. I don't know. Hawk and Godchild find a Tesseract that will allow them to get to the Fortress of Solitude, so they enter that, and they travel through to the Fortress of Solitude, where they find Superman, Prime Superman, and so it's revealed that Godchild wants to take control of Prime Superman and use his power to rule. The Astral Shaft controls people's minds, that's what it does. Kanara takes down Godchild's chimps using sea animals, and then Godchild presumably uses his mind powers. It's presumed that he has the same kind of powers as Grodd because he manages to manipulate Hawk into helping him. And so Hawk goes to shoot the Astral Shaft, which just looks like a regular arrow, at Superman. And that's when Kanara communicates with Hawk through her mind. Because apparently she can't... It's not just, I can communicate with, aquatic animals. It's, I can communicate with anyone using my mind as long as they are a living thing. So she does that. She communicates with Hawk. She manages to break through Grodd's mind control and convinces Hawk to turn against Grodd. He shoots Grodd with the Astral Shaft, and Grodd starts beating himself up because he's now under Hawk's control. And as this happens, Superman's just like, huh? What's going on up there? And then he walks over to Hawk and is like, hey, you did a great job taking down that guy. And Hawk is just like, you're the legendary Superman. Can you tell me about, Connor and Oliver Queen? And Superman's like, yeah, of course, I work with them. They're two great Green Arrows. Lots of fun. I actually tried to save Oliver Queen from an exploding plane, and I failed. And then he died. And I still feel incredibly guilty about that. And Hawk's just like, oh, that sucks. He doesn't actually say that. And then they head back to the rest of the Green Arrows, because it's like an entire community of people that dress like Green Arrow and have like bow and arrows and stuff. And they're like, yay, like Hawk and Kinara are legends. And Hawk is like, our ancestors don't exist in this point in time. They were left in their own time, but we have learnt that they were amazing people, and so we're going to keep their legacy alive as the Green Arrows. You know, what we're doing is the right thing. Like, we always thought that Connor and Oliver were legendary, and it turns out we were right, because Superman himself confirmed what we thought. And we cut back to Connor, who has just gotten out of his trance, and he says, he's like, I saw the future. I saw that Oliver and I have descendants in the future. And that means one thing. It means that Oliver Queen is alive. And that's the end of the tie-in. So yeah, that's the big reveal at the end, is that Green Arrow 1 million seems to be the beginning of the build-up towards Oliver Queen being resurrected. This was the first mentioning of they're going to bring Oliver Queen back to life. Because as we know, he does get brought back to life, and he gets his own series in 2001, which is only 3 years after this. So I think this is where the build-up begins. This is where it starts. Day of Judgment continues to build on that, which is an event that we're going to be covering in the future. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. I was not expecting that kind of ending where it was like, no, Oliver Queen has to be alive because he has descendants in the future. But yeah, that's the end of that. And so the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Legionnaires 1 million, which, if you don't know the Legionnaires, they're another Legion of Superheroes team. Because at the moment in the 90s, there's the Legion of Superheroes, and then the Legionnaires exist at the same time, and I guess they're like sister teams. But yeah, this tie-in, Legionnaires on 1 million, is written by Tom Pierre, and with art by Sean Phillips and Tom McCraw. Alright, so Legionnaires 1 million. This is going to take a bit to explain, because Tom Pierre really went into it. Really decided to craft an entire universe in a single issue. So there's a lot of stuff to go through, a lot of stuff to cover. First of all, thing we need to cover right now is who are the future Legion. In the future, they're called the Justice Legion L. Their members are Brainiac 417, who is the future version of Brainiac, the Mon-Elves, who are the future version of Mon-El, and they're like little, there's like lots of them, and they're like little Mon-Elves. Implicate Girl, who is the future of, I think, the Triple Girl, whatever her name was. I can't remember her name, the one that can turn into 3 people. I've talked about her in the past. Titan Girl, who is the future version of Saturn Girl. The Chameleon, who is the future version of Chameleon Boy. The Umbra, who is the future version of, I think, Shade, or whatever her name is. The one that could, like, use, like, shadows and stuff. Probably getting the name wrong. I'm pretty sure I know, like, I'm right on the one I'm thinking of, though. And Cosmic Bot, who is the future version of Cosmic Boy. So, at this point in the future, the Justice Legion L watch over what they call the United Planets, which are a group of planets that are all united. They're all connected by something that is known as the magnetic... What was it called? It's got a specific name. Sorry. I've got to go find it. Like I said, like, there's a lot going on in this. The cluster magnetism, which is something that Cosmic Boy's species in the far future would eventually become such experts on their magnetic powers that they would turn their bodies into magnetic metal and become magnetic metal beings with giant heads. And yeah, they used their magnetic powers to join all the planets together with a magnetic field that keeps them protected. The Brainiac's planet, which is Kolu Bigzatul in the future, it used to be two distinct worlds that merged together. So the Bigzitlians and the Koluans fused together and transformed into spirit intellects, so they no longer had flesh or anything, and they could just they could just rely entirely on their mind and just be intangible geniuses. The Daxamites, and another species known as the Imskians fused together, which allowed the Daxamites to become humanized and omnipowerful, which is why I think they have multiple powers. I'm assuming it's supposed to be like Ultra Boy and Mon-El's species fused together, and so now they all have, like, they're all Daxamites, but they can have multiple powers instead of just one, which explains why the Mon-Elves, like, it explains the Mon-Elves, because they are Daxamites, they have Daxamite abilities, but they also have the abilities of Ultra Boy, and so they can, like, multiply. You know what I mean? Like, are you getting what I mean? I'm trying to explain it. I'm pretty sure it doesn't really explain it. This issue assumes you are reading Legionnaires. Like, it is it doesn't just assume that you're reading the Legionnaires. It assumes that you know a lot about the Legion of Superheroes, and I do not. So I'm trying to explain this as much as this comic explains to me. Then you got Karg, which is Implicate Girl's world with 1 trillion people that live on it, because it was the character that could triple themselves, and so their planet ended up with like 1 trillion people. Titan, which is Saturn Girl's world, where most of the people there spend their time in catatonic states, communicating through telepathy so that they can see heaven. That's what they spend all their time doing. Chameleon's world is basically Chameleon Boy's species just completely stopped using their powers altogether, because Chameleon Boy has the ability to shapeshift into anything, but they just stopped doing that, and now all they do is they only turn invisible. Like, they only use camouflage, and that's it. The whole planet is camouflaged. It's actually against their religion to shapeshift or do anything that isn't just camouflage. The Umbra's planet, which is Talok 8, is the only one that didn't evolve past the 20th century, so they are just warriors who have evolved to protect their planet from the other planets that did evolve with the centuries. And I've already explained Cosmic Boy's planet. So that's every single planet explained. That's every character explained. Specifically on Cosmic Bot's planet is a member of his species whose name is Agent If. He is a terrorist who has this thing called a Realitoy, which is supposed to be a children's toy, but it has the ability to control small aspects of reality. So the other members of his species are trying to stop him because he's got a really dangerous weapon. And so Agent If tries to kill these two scientists that are trying to stop him, and then the Mon-Elves show up and save them, and then Titan Girl shows up to face Agent If, and Agent If uses the Realitoy to transport them to the sun so that Titan Girl will be completely destroyed. And so Brainiac 417 needs to find a way to save Titan Girl from the sun, and Agent If realizes that Titan Girl isn't actually on the sun and is just being projected there because the Realitoy isn't powerful enough to, or wasn't powerful enough to bring her there. Or, like, what Agent If asked the Realitoy to do was, he wasn't specific enough. He didn't say to bring Titan Girl physically to the sun. He just said, bring her here, and it was just like, oh, just create a projection of her. And so Agent If is like, oh, all I have to remember is, you are just an idea in my head. You couldn't be here if I didn't exist. And because he thinks about himself not existing, the Realitoy erases him from existence. So Agent If just accidentally erases himself from existence by speaking it out loud while he holds the Realitoy. And then Titan Girl is brought to the ship that Brainiac 417 is on, and they're in the sun still, because they teleport to her. And so the sun starts destroying the ship from the outside. And so Brainiac 417 is like, Chameleon Boy, you gotta save us. You gotta use your powers. And Chameleon Boy is like, I can't. It's against my religion. I'm only allowed to use camouflage. And eventually Chameleon Boy uses his powers and is pushed to save everyone and go against his own religion. And then they head back to Cosmic Bot. Like, Titan Girl teleports to Cosmic Bot to go and talk to him, and Cosmic Bot says that he reveals that Dream Girl exists in the future still and is in this coma state, and the way that she has been reacting to what's, like, her body has been reacting to what's going on, he senses that something terrible is going to happen. And the terrible thing that is going to happen is the magnetic fields that are connecting the United Planets together are going to crumble apart. And if that happens, then the planets are all in danger of being destroyed. So Cosmic Bot has no choice but to head into the Wildfire. And what the Wildfire is Wildfire is a member of the Legion of Superheroes. And he's the only member of the Legion of Superheroes to live forever. Like, this is the same Wildfire from the 20th century. He has been a member of every single Legion of Superheroes, and at some point, he just ended up being this fire portal that you can enter in order to see his memories and learn about the history of the Legion. That's as good as I can explain it. So Cosmic Boy heads into Wildfire and sees the history through Wildfire's memories, and he learns that in the most recent version of the Legion of Superheroes, from 1,000 years ago, he teamed up with the last Superboy that existed, and that Superboy sacrificed himself because the planet was being hit by a whole bunch of energy, and Wildfire and Superboy teamed up in order to absorb the energy from the planet, and it's assumed that that's what destroyed Wildfire's physical body and made him just like this fire portal. And so, yeah, Cosmic Bot learns about this, and then all of a sudden, before he can explain what he saw, the headquarters of the Legion are attacked by these giant beasts with horns and crap. And so the Legionnaires attack them and fight them off, and Cosmic Boy gets his arm bitten off by one of them, and it's this that pushes Chameleon to use his powers again, because up until this point he hasn't been using his powers. Like, since he saved the ship, he hasn't been fighting these beasts. So seeing Cosmic Boy get so hurt, he turns against these beasts. He morphs into a giant ball around them and then carries them out of the headquarters. And Cosmic Boy has lost his arm. And then Chameleon Boy shows up, and Umbrella's like, I'm starting to think that those beasts might have been your species, so I'm going to go to your planet and see if I'm right. So Umbra heads off to find Chameleon Boy's planet, like Chameleon's planet, and see if he can find out if they were responsible for attacking their headquarters. And meanwhile, Cosmic Boy... oh wait, no, it's not Cosmic Boy. Cosmic Bot. It's Brainiac 417 says that he knows someone who might be able to help them with their current dilemma because the cluster magnetism is degrading and that the UP bond will decay in minutes and he can't fix it. He's like, I know one Legionnaire who can, and he heads 1,000 years into the past to a classroom where he meets Chris Kend, who is the Superboy of 1,000 years ago, and he tells Chris to help them because he is possibly the only person that can help them stop the United Planets from being destroyed. And so, yeah, it ends with Chris Kend turning into Superboy of the future. Superboy 1 million. Is this Superboy 1 million? Because we met Superboy 1 million in Young Justice 1 million. And now we're meeting another Superboy. Like, there's multiple Superboys in the future. Like, really? Way to make things a bit confusing. But yeah, this is a different future Superboy. And he's teaming up with the Justice Legion L. And we'll find out what happens in the next tie-in, which is Legion of Superheroes 1 million. And it's funny because at the end of this, there is a fun little gag where they say, next, in Legionnaires 1,000,001, the Phantom Monelves. And, like, obviously, Legionnaires 1,000,001 doesn't exist. It's just a fun little thing that Tom Payer decided to do. But yeah, next tie-in, Legion of Superheroes, issue 1 million. Also written by Tom Payer, with art by Keith Giffen, rest in peace, and Al Gordon. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about that tie-in. Legionnaires 1 million. It's rough because, like, I enjoyed it, but boy, was it a real bitch to explain. It's probably the most confusing one yet, and it means that I'm not really looking forward to reading Legion of Superheroes issue 1 million because I'm afraid it's going to be as confusing as Legionnaires 1 million was, because you're just thrown into the deep end where it's like, oh, you know who all these characters are, or we're just going to quickly explain who everyone is, and you should already know who they're an ancestor for and what they're all references to. Wait, that was a real brain scratcher right there. I explained it the best I could. I hope I did as good a job as possible. I feel like I did. If you want to read it, go and read. If you feel like I didn't explain it well enough, you can go ahead and read it. Maybe you'll be able to make more sense out of it than I did. But yeah, the next tie-in, Legion of Superheroes, issue 1 million. So let's get straight into it and see what happens next in this Legionnaires story. Is the Legion of Superheroes 1 million tie-in better than the Legionnaires one? It really depends on how you classify better, because I think it's just as bad in terms of, like, for the same reasons. This issue is just as complicating as the one, when it doesn't need to be. I don't know what it is with Tom Payer, but, like, he just decided to make it incredibly confusing and complicated for no reason. You want to know how this issue begins? It begins in the 863rd century. Yeah, the last issue started with them recruiting Superboy, and you would think, oh, then the next tie-in that follows right afterward would start with continuing on from where that one left. But no, it doesn't. It starts in the 863rd century, where we meet this guy named Dav and his friends, and they all look the same. They all look like Lex Luthor. They come from the species where everyone looks like Lex Luthor for some reason. You don't even know what the species is. They just all look like Lex. And then, like, the women look like, you know, women Lex, like the female Lexes. And Dav and his friends find a piece of paper that has the pictures of the Legionnaires on them. And then he goes home and he starts drawing Brainiac because he just thinks of it. Because he's seen the drawing of Brainiac on a piece of paper. And so he starts drawing it in his room. And his dad comes in and is like, what are you drawing? Are you believing in something that isn't just like... Are you believing in something? Because we're not allowed to do that. And he starts beating up his own son because there's child abuse in this. For no reason. And then... So Dav goes back to his friends. And his friends are like, hey, did you fall over? And he's like... Or like, they don't say that. They're like, hey, what happened to you, Dav? And Dav's just like, I fell over. That's why I got this bruise on my eye. It's like, what the hell? Why is there abuse in this, and why doesn't it matter? That's the biggest problem. I'm not against having stuff like confrontational stuff like this in comic books, having abusive parents and stuff in order to expand on a character, but I do have a problem with it being used in a comic just for shock value, which is what it's used in for this. Because it doesn't matter. Because Dav doesn't matter. And his friends don't matter. And his family doesn't matter. Not in the larger scheme of this story. This is just one single tie-in, yet Tom Payer is writing it as if it was guaranteed to become its own miniseries or something. Because he puts so much energy into trying to expand Dav as a character. It even ends as if Dav is going to continue on doing stuff. But he's not, because this is DC 1 million, this is an event, this is a tie-in, and we're probably never going to see these characters ever again. So this intro, with Dav and his friends finding this picture of the Legionnaires, the only purpose it serves is so that Wildfire... So basically what happens is Dav's friend blasts the piece of paper, destroying it. Because he's like, that picture is evil, it touched us, we must destroy it. And the paper fires back and Wildfire launches itself out of the piece of paper. So it's just a way for Wildfire to appear to them and explain to them what's happening. And therefore explain to the reader what happened in the previous tie-in. That's all it serves. That's the only purpose it serves. This whole Dav subplot is just a overly long way of giving the reader a catch-up on what happened in the previous tie-in. So at this very moment, Superboy is keeping the planets together using his powers, stopping them from drifting apart. Because the magnetic field between them has been separated. Meanwhile, Umbra has gone to the Chameleon's planet in order to get revenge, because he believes that the Chameleons were the ones that sent the metal-eating beasts, because that's their official name, that's what they refer to them as, the metal-eating beasts to their headquarters, to destroy their generators that were generating the magnetic field. That's what he's doing. Dream Girl awakens and Cosmic Bot discovers from Dream Girl that it's likely that they're going to lose no matter what they do. And then the Metal Eaters show up again, and the Mon-Elves start fighting them, and they realize that the Mon-Elves aren't doing anything to them, which is really weird. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And that the metal-eating beasts are able to hurt Brainiac 417, which also doesn't make any sense. It makes sense within the context of the story when we learn what's happening, but at the moment to the characters, they're just like, why are they hurting us? This doesn't make any sense. Umbra heads to the Chameleon's planet where he starts fighting the Chameleons species, and then the Brainiac 417 decides to summon Titan Girl to help them. So Titan Girl shows up, and the chameleon species try to explain to Umbra that they weren't the ones responsible for what happened, but they do know who were. So they head to Titan. And I don't know why Chameleon Boy... I don't know why Chameleon just didn't say this to begin with. But apparently he knows what's going on. because he takes Umbra to Titan, which is where Titan Girl comes from, and he reveals to Umbra that the people on Titan were behind all of this, and that there is a tree on Titan which is an engine for propelling Titan free of the UP. So it means that Titan Girl is the real traitor who was behind this the whole time. And she was using her mind powers to create these fake metal beasts, like these like, they're not real. They are figments of your imagination, of your mind. That's why the Mon Elves weren't able to hurt them. It's also why the metal beasts were able to hurt Brainiac 417, because it was messing with his mind, so he believed that they were hurting him. So, yeah, Titan Girl is evil. She's a traitor. And so they fight Titan Girl and they beat the crap out of her. And then it's realized that, like, the magnetic field was never actually broken. It was just an illusion created by Titan Girl. And so Superboy just stops trying to keep the planets together because he doesn't need to, because they were never broken to begin with. And then Cosmic Bot and Brainiac 417 use their abilities to wipe the minds of all of Titan Girl's people and replace them with memories of peace, in hopes that Titan Girl and her species will rejoin them in the future. And then Dav wakes up after being knocked out by Wildfire's blast from the beginning of the story. And he jumps on a little, like, flying device. Oh, wait, no. Dav wakes up to find his dad, who has come looking for him. And Dav is talking about what he saw, and his dad is just like, that's it, you're delirious. And so they take Dav away, and they put him in, like, a mental hospital, basically, because they're like, oh, Dav's gone crazy. He's talking about, like, Wildfire and the Legionnaires and stuff. And so it turns out that Wildfire is actually within Dav and has become one with him. And so within Dav's own mind, Wildfire tells Dav that his future has been set and that he will become a superhero alongside his friends, and that they'll become future Legionnaires, members of the Legion of Superheroes. We don't know. The last page just has Dav and his friends as superheroes. We don't know what their names are. We just kind of know what they look like. Don't know what their powers are or anything. And that's it. That's the end of the tie-in. There's not really a lot I can say except that I just didn't like these last two tie-ins. I'm sorry. Like, if you like the Legionnaires, you like Legion of Superheroes, and you like these tie-ins, then great. But, like, I was never a huge fan of them to begin with. It's not that I don't like the Legionnaires or Legion of Superheroes. I just don't have strong feelings about them, and I can take them or leave them, you know? But these tie-ins, like, I've read Legion of Superheroes issues, like other tie-ins, and I remember enjoying those, but these two were just way too complicated, too convoluted, way too much lore dumping. I don't even know what was going on in this one with the whole Dav thing. Like, what the hell? His father was abusive to him. Remember that? That happened. His father was hitting him for no reason. I mean, he had a reason, but, like, there was no reason for it to be in the story because it didn't matter. It didn't affect anything. And Dav being in the story doesn't affect anything either, because, yeah, it ends with Dav becoming a superhero, but that's not going to go anywhere. I don't think so. I don't think Dav comes back after this. But yeah, that's enough of that. That's enough of Legion of Superheroes 1 million. Instead, we're going to move on to the next tie-in, which is Sword of Azrael, issue 1 million. Azrael, issue 1 million. I went into this one, I was afraid, because I know what Azrael is like. I know, like, Azrael is a ridiculous series. It's bonkers. It's Denny O'Neil just doing whatever the hell he wants. And it's amazing. Because Azrael issue 1 million is my favorite tie-in so far. I think. Like, thinking back to all the other tie-ins, this is the one I enjoyed reading the most. It's batshit bonkers, but unlike the Legion tie-ins, it makes sense. It's not confusing at all. It has a straightforward narrative. Denny O'Neil tells the story that he wants to tell, which is a very simple one, and it also involves time travel, and yet it still makes sense. So yeah, let's get into this. I'm really excited to talk about this one because it's really good. It's really fun. It's just bonkers fun. It's just Denny O'Neil being like, I'm just gonna do something, like, just a really fun story about what Azrael would be like in the future. So it's written by Denny O'Neil. R.I.P. Miss Denny O'Neil, one of my favorite writers. With art by Vince Giordano and Demetrius Basokis. So it's assumed that it's not Jean-Paul Valley, who is the current Azrael in the present. It's assumed that this is a descendant of his, but that doesn't matter. Because what matters is that this is Azrael in the future. And Azrael in the future is badass. He's got long flowing yellow hair. He's got golden armor with giant golden gauntlets. Big golden wings with holographic blue feathers. He looks badass. I love this design. It's one of my favorite designs of all time. It looks so freaking badass. So the Order of Saint Dumas exists in the future. There's this other character who only goes by the name Sister Dumas. She's like a purple alien with a green dress on. And she wanted to recruit real angels into the Order of Saint Dumas. But that's impossible, so they go for the second best thing, which is just a random dude who dresses up in this costume. They call him Azrael. And they give him fake angel wings that are just as good as real angel wings. These angel wings allow Azrael to teleport wherever he wants to go instantly. So he teleports away and comes back in a second. She's like, where did you go? And he's like, Mogersbrod, planet in the Albarian system. Pretty foul place, I don't recommend it. The wings are really good. And so she has a conversation with him about, like, the rules of his powers. She's like, you can time travel, but make sure you don't travel more than 100 years into the past, because if you do, you'll become nothing but a non-corporeal spirit who can't do anything in the past. Also, if you come back here, make sure you don't come back at a time that you are here, because if you meet yourself, it could cause all sorts of problems. And then she also says that, she basically says to Azrael, she's like, your mission is to just go out and just be a good guy. Go out, take out villains, do whatever you have to do, have fun. And while she's talking to him, he travels to the Proctolus, to Proctolus in the Sirius system, and he comes back just covered in shit. And she's like, the planet known as the armpit of the galaxy? And he's like, actually, they don't call it the armpit. It's another section of the anatomy. Now I know why. So he cleans himself up. And then he pulls out his sword, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna use, with these wings and my awesome sword, I can do anything. I can stop any villain. And then she's like, actually, can you give me the sword? I'm thinking of altering it so that you could literally cut through reality. And Azrael's like, alright, there you go. Anyone who is a fan of anime or video games would probably love Denny O'Neil's Azrael run, because that's literally what it is. It's anime and video games in comic book form. It's just ridiculous. I love it. So Azrael starts traveling through time, traveling to different places in the 853rd century so that he can help different heroes of this era. So he finds Green Arrow. Now, the Green Arrow that Denny O'Neil presents in this only appears on, a couple of pages, so I'm not going to get too uptight about the fact that this isn't the same Green Arrow as the one that we saw in Green Arrow 1 million. But at the same time, there are a lot of Green Arrows in Green Arrow 1 million, so I could just chalk it up and I could just do a solid for Denny and just be like, it was just one of the Green Arrows. But yeah, Azrael meets a future Green Arrow who is he is fighting, or at least it seems like he's fighting a giant dinosaur thing, like a big dinosaur monster. And Azrael just comes in, takes Green Arrow's bow and arrow, and then kills this monster. He's like, there you go, saved your life. And Green Arrow's like, why did you do that? That was my mentor. I was training with him. And Azrael's just like, well, if you're going to be like that. And then he leaves. And then he travels to where future Catwoman and Robin the Toy Wonder are. Which goes to show that Denny O'Neil was, like, at least communicating with some of the writers, or he'd read that tie-in, because it's the same Catwoman and Robin the Toy Wonder. Same designs. He goes there, and they talk about how they met this thing called the Zizorg, and they were going to see if it could, be if it was a good monster or a bad one. And then it woke up and it started eating cities, so they had to stop it. And Robin's just like, I wish there was a way we could have done it without killing it, but oh well. And Catwoman hits on Azrael, and Azrael's like, hey, if you ditch the little dweeb over there, maybe we can hang out, wink wink. And then he leaves to go and find some more people to help. And he finds the Hawkman Squadron from the Superman tie-in. Remember them? And he's like, hey guys, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm Azrael, come to aid you in the never-ending battle for justice. And they're like, you're in the wrong place, friend. It's been quiet as a church for weeks. You think there would be more action on a planet named for an ancient god of war? And one of them's just like, I thought it was named after an ancient candy bar. Because he's on Mars. And so basically they explain to Azrael why they're there. They're waiting for the Frixit to awaken. But the problem is that there's two different types of Frixits. There is the Bodleian Frixit, and when a Bodleian Frixit awakens, they devote themselves to spreading peace and joy. But then there's the non-Bodleian Frixits, and when they awake, they cause mayhem and destruction. So they have no choice but to wait for it to wake up, and either they are going, when Azrael returns to see them, they're going to be dancing all happy, or they're possibly going to be gone and killed by the Frixit. So Azrael's like, alright, I'll leave you to it. I'll see you later, bye. And he heads off. And he's like, nobody needs help in my era, so why don't I go see another era? Maybe I'll see one of my descendants, or like one of my ancestors. So he heads back in time to the 20th century, which Lady Dumas told him not to do. And he goes and sees the present Azrael fighting Two-Face. And he tries to help him, and the present Azrael can hear future Azrael, but can't see him. And he's like, crap. She said not to come into the past, or I'll turn incorporeal. Well, I'm even more of an actual angel now. And so he just watches Azrael kick Two-Face's ass, and then he's like, alright, so that's all sorted. I'll pop back to Mars and look in on the Hawks. And he heads back to Mars, and he sees that the Frixit is awoken, and that the Hawks are just kind of like, he's like, oh, the Frixit woke up, let me at him. And one of the Hawks is like, not a good idea. And future Azrael just picks up a nearby gun and just blasts the crap out of the Frixit and kills it. He's like, you murdered him, a friend, a benefactor. And they're all covered in like Frixit goo. It's really gross. He's like, we're just beginning to understand the beauty of all creation, to participate in the ineffable wholeness of all that is, and you went and killed it, killed our chance to finally find tranquility. He's like, well, look, you could find another Frixit, and wait 11 millennia, forget it. Hey, it's your own fault. You should have said something. And they're like, we tried! It's like, not hard enough, so don't blame me, and he just heads off. I just love this. I just love, Azrael shows up, messes things up, and then it's just like, hey, it's not my fault, it's your fault, see ya. And so he heads back to where Lady Dumas is, and lo and behold, he gets back when he's there. So he meets himself. And the second he meets himself, he's like, I recognize you. And the other version of him is like, and I recognize you too. Evil incarnate. And so they rush to grab the sword, and one of them grabs the sword before the other Azrael, and the two Azraels start fighting each other, but then they drop the sword, and one of the Azraels gets the upper hand, and they both crawl over to try and get the sword, and then Lady Dumasta shows up and is like, no more combat. He's like, but you told me to seek out evil and destroy it. And she's like, no, I told you to recognize it. He's like, yeah, I do. That's evil if I ever saw it. And she's like, the ancient artifact is called a mirror. Look into it. What do you see? He's like, the evil? And she's like, blink your eyes. And he's like, the evil blink too. She's like, because what you're looking at is your own reflection. It's like, so it is. And he's like, remember I told you not to go to a point in space and time where you already were? And you just did that? Well, now there's two of you. You both exist. And at some point, you're gonna fuse together. That's fate. And he's like, did this ever happen to you? She's like, yeah, it happened to me once too. So she's like alluding to the fact that she met her own self and then fused with herself and became who she is. And so Azrael is just like to his counterpart, his double. He's like, what next? Shall we seek out space pirates, monsters, marauding invaders? And he's like, I got a better idea. So, and so do you. Let's find a sleeping Frixit. And Azrael's just like, the Bodleian kind? And the other one's just like, and I'll bring an alarm clock. And that's where it ends. The two Azraels head off to go on insane adventures together until the day that they will eventually fuse together to become one, and who knows what'll happen then. But yeah, that's the end of the Azrael tie-in. Like I said, it's bonkers, but weirdly makes sense. Like, it's not confusing. It's insane. There's a lot of weird stuff in it, but it makes sense. There's a story. It's told, and I liked it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great tie-in. Had a lot of fun reading it. I hope you check it out. Like, if you're gonna read 1 million, DC 1 million, this is one of the tie-ins that I highly recommend reading alongside it. Even though it's not important to the rest of the event, it's just such a good tie-in. And so, yeah, that's it for the Azrael tie-in. And the next tie-in, we're going to be talking about Creeper 1 million. Now, I forgot the Creeper had a tie-in to this. If you don't know who the Creeper is, his name is Jack Ryder. He's usually depicted as a reoccurring character in Batman stuff. He's normally a journalist who gets himself into deep trouble, and one time he got himself into trouble that ended up in him being dumped into chemicals by gangsters, I'm pretty sure, and those chemicals transformed him into the Creeper. The Creeper is a yellow-skinned dude with green hair who is just as insane as the Joker, but even the Joker is scared of him. And he's also a good guy. He's not a bad guy like the Joker is. He's a good guy. Some would say he's an anti-hero. I don't even think the Creeper is an anti-hero. He's just straight up a good guy and just a weirdo. But yeah, so this is the tie-in all about him. And I'm hoping it's good because yeah, the Azrael one was good. And yeah, we've already proven that even if it's about a bonkers character, you can have a good tie-in. What can I say about Creeper 1 million except that it's weirder than the Azrael tie-in. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I don't know if I like it. I haven't really figured that out. I think I do. I kind of do. I kind of don't. Maybe I'm like right in the middle. I'm not sure if I like it or not because it's just really weird, and I feel like it's one of those comics I'd have to think about for a bit before I make a decision like that. So Creeper 1 million is written by Len Kaminsky, who dropped acid before writing this, and Sean Martinborough, who also dropped acid before drawing this, and Selby Shimmer, who didn't. He was actually fully sober. So it begins with something talking about different planets, and it begins talking about a trickster planet. A trickster planet that is known as Lao, or Lai. Yeah, Lai, I think is what it's called. This is the world of the Creeper. Basically, the whole planet is just, if you imagine what the Creeper would be like if it was an entire planet, like if Ego, the living planet, and the Creeper fused together, that's Lai. And there's this computer system thing. It's like a big box, kind of looks like the mother box. It's called Ryder. And it landed on this planet. Get it? Because Jack Ryder is the Creeper. It landed on this planet, and it absorbs the information from the planet and the essence of the planet and transforms into the futuristic version of the Creeper. And the Creeper is all-consuming chaos and decides that it needs to just go off, and it has a duty. It senses its duty, and it decides that it needs to fulfill it. And in order to fulfill that duty, this future Creeper thinks about time travel and just figures out how it works and how to do it. So he just gets time travel powers. He just thinks about it, and he's like, I can time travel now. And he time travels all the way back to the present, where we find that currently in Creeper comics, Jack Ryder, because Creeper had his own series at this time, Jack Ryder and Creeper are two separate beings now. They've been completely split up. Not just into two separate forms, but there are multiple Creepers running around the city, all of his different personalities. So the Creeper currently has, like, no personality and doesn't care about anything. And so the future Creeper has come back in time to grab all the past Creepers and put them into his present self, and then also get Jack and the Creeper to join together again and become one. That's his goal. Jack hits him with mace, though, when he first meets him, so they can get away from him, because they think that this future Creeper is trying to kill them or eat them. And so, yeah, the future Creeper goes around finding, like, the different versions of the Creeper, and he just grabs them and he eats them. He grabs, like, a self-loathing Creeper and eats him. He'll be important later, surprisingly. Yeah, he just finds all these different Creepers and he consumes them, and then he goes back to Jack and the regular Creeper, and he appears before them, and he grabs present Creeper, and he lets out all of the souls of the Creepers that he's absorbed, and they all go into the present Creeper, restoring him to his full self. And then he's just like, there you go, little fella, good as new, maybe better even. You two crazy kids listen to your mother now. Oh, and make up, remember, you promised. And Jack's just like, we did, didn't we? And the Creeper's like, ooh, just like William Shatner in the old margarine commercials. Put her there, friend. And they hold hands, and they join back together into one. So it's Jack Ryder, but he can turn into the Creeper. And he, like, sees, like, a bunch of cops in a getaway chase against a gang of clowns, and he turns into the Creeper and goes after them and tries taking them down. And the future Creeper is just like, I've done my part, I'm gonna head back to the future and finish off my goal. Like, finish off my duty, because my role isn't done. Like, my goal isn't finished yet. I've got one more job left to do. So he heads back to the future, and he reveals that the self-loathing Creeper personality that he absorbed earlier, he didn't give that back to Jack Ryder, because self-loathing Creeper was the reason this all began in the first place. And so he just, like, smushes self-loathing Creeper, just, like, steps on him and squashes him. And he's like, yay, I did it! And now there's no need for me to be the Creeper anymore. And he returns to just being the Ryder mother box. And it ends with a page that is just like, thus concludes this account of my progenital ancestor from the period of that particular incarnation. 999,988 more such tales remain untold. And that's it. That's the end of it. I think after the second read through, I can come to the conclusion that I don't necessarily like this tie-in, but I also don't hate it. I think it's fine. What was I expecting out of a creeper title other than just pure insanity, which is what this is? It does what it accomplishes. I think it's a very particular audience that would enjoy this. The art style is really cool, I think. Yeah, if you like weird stuff, like if you like weird shit, maybe check it out. You might like this. Not my cup of tea. But yeah, enough about the creeper, because now we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite DC character, Chase. Just kidding. Nah, I'm not going against any Chase fans. If you don't know who Chase is, she's a member of the DEO, which is a corporation in DC that deals with alien shit, like aliens, monsters, superpowered beings that they deem too dangerous for Earth to even know about. So they usually, like, it's like DC's answer to like Area 52, where if an alien lands on planet Earth, the DEO grabs them before anyone even knows they exist. You know, like if the DEO existed back when John Johns arrived on Earth, they probably would have nabbed him before he met the Justice League. So yeah, Chase 1 million. So we're dealing with what is presumably a descendant of Chase from present day, who is the assistant to Mr. Bones, the leader of the DEO. So yeah, let's see what Chase is up to in the year 853rd, like in the 851st century. Let's see what Chase's ancestors are like, I guess. Or descendants. I keep saying ancestors. Descendants is the one we're supposed to be talking about. It's written by D. Curtis Johnson and J.H. Williams III with art. Oh yeah, it's written by D. Curtis Johnson with art by J.H. Williams III and Mick Gray. Alright, so Chase 1 million, or you could also just call it DEO 1 million, because it's basically what it is. Yeah, I forgot to mention that like the DEO does mostly focus on superpowered beings. They've dealt with aliens before, but like they mostly deal with superpowered stuff. I got that wrong. I said they were focused on like aliens and stuff, but like they're mostly focused on superpowered beings because they believe them a danger to society. And they're also usually shown to be like the bad guys in most issues that they appear in. Like they are usually the antagonists, and that's no different in this, except they're shown in even more of a villainous light in this book, because as time has gone on, the DEO has changed and they've kind of lost more of their morals, and now they just don't care about superpowered beings at all. It's just all about grabbing them, detaining them, no matter who they are, and very few of the members have a conscience and feel bad about what they do. It's gotten to the point where the agents of the DEO don't even have names anymore. They just have ranks. So Chase is our quote-unquote main protagonist in this issue, but that's not her real name. That's just the rank that she's in. And her two partners, Snare and it was Snare and Snare. Yeah, the Snare and then the other one. Sorry, it's because they've got very generic names. Snare and Lead. So it starts off with Snare and Lead going after this guy named Sandoval, who is he's got powers because he has what is called a toxic icon, which is a gadget that you wear on your arm that gives you powers. So they're trying to arrest him because toxic icons are illegal, and he tries to get away by using his toxic icon to give him fire abilities, and Chase changes hers so that it gives her like vortex abilities, and she just destroys his arm, And then with a last-ditch effort, he tries to use a teleporting ability, which looks like what, the ambush bug, the DC character that's kind of like the Deadpool of the DC universe. He 4/4 breaking and stuff like that. He tries to use ambush bug's ability to teleport away, and he ends up just teleporting inside a wall, which kills him. And it's really kind of horrifying because his face is like melded with the wall, and there's blood dripping out of his head and stuff. And he's just like, Cheeto, damn, because he loves Cheetos. Just kidding. He's talking about somebody called Cheeto. Cheeto is a name, Chito. So Chase returns back to base to meet with Skull, who is the leader of the DEO. Again, this is just a name for the leader. It's not their real name. It's become very unemotional with the DEO, where like nobody's got names. Everyone just does their job. And showing emotion and care is the sign of a weakness and is kind of like a bad thing. So she decides that they need to go out and try and find Cheeto, but they don't know where Cheeto is. They don't even know if it's a real person. And so Chase hooks into the local system using her hacking abilities, and figures out that there is a Cheeto who is not connected to the HeadNet server that is on Mars. So they're going to go to Mars, and they're going to find out if this is the Cheeto Delamar that they're looking for. And so before they go, Skull was like, I'll give you some abilities, because the DEO in the future have the ability to be given superpowers for each mission that they can deal with, so they can deal with the mission as swiftly as possible. So they head to Mars and they find Cheeto Delamar's home, which is just a regular old looking house. And they really, Chase and the others, they really hate the fact that his house is so average and there's no technology. The reason he doesn't have any technology is because he's been disconnected from the HeadNet. So they show up and they're like, we know that you were involved with Sandoval. He had illegal toxic icons, and we want to know where they are so that you can give it to us, and if you don't tell us, we'll just steal it from your brain anyway, and we'll find out the truth. And Cheeto is basically just like, I worked with Sandoval, but I never gave him toxic icons to sell. It was his choice to start selling them. I gave them to him and I said they were experimental, they weren't for selling. And he went and did it anyway. And he's like, I just want to live a normal life. I'm cut off from the HeadNet. I'm just trying to live a normal, honest life. I have a daughter now. I want to look up to her. I want her to look up to me. I want to be a great example for her. And this is where Chase starts wavering. Because she's like, maybe we should leave him alone. He's just a normal dude who just wants to live with his daughter. But Lead and Snare refuse. And they're like, we need to find the location of these toxic icons, the truth, so that we can get them and finish our job. And as they're doing this, that's when Alouette enters the room, because they believe that Alouette is the one who has the toxic icon. So as soon as she enters the room, they're immediately like, we need you to come with us, because we need to know where those toxic icons are. And she's like, just leave my dad alone, leave us alone, we don't want any trouble. And she gets threatened by Lead, and that's when... no, it's not Lead. Snare threatens her, and Chase is like, Snare, wait! And that's when Cheeto is like, you won't get her like you got me! And so Snare shoots a bunch of light spikes at Cheeto, nailing him to a wall, and he's like, Alouette, run! And Alouette uses her toxic icon. She reveals that she's wearing one, and she uses powers to take lead out, and then she uses psychic powers, she uses some psychic abilities to throw a bunch of books at Snare and Chase, but Chase manages to protect herself with her shield, so her two allies are knocked out, but she's fine. And that's when Alouette uses Shazam's abilities to smash her way out of the nearby window. And she's like, I'm sorry, Father. I wish it didn't work this way. And she jumps out and then flies away. And Chase can't go after her because it's too late. Alouette is gone. And so Alouette goes away and they lose sight of her. And Chase heads back to Skull, where Skull reveals to Chase that she was once a Chase as well. And much like this Chase, she started to question how the DEO worked. And the only way to pull herself away from that and to get back on task was for her to become the new Skull. And so she tells Chase to go back to her quarters and she'll send Chase the details of the next step in her career in the DEO, and that will, be her path. It'll be related to the future. She'll be like, I'm going to be sending you a bunch of important information and it is going to decide your future here at the DEO. And so it's kind of hinting that this Chase that we know, the chances of her becoming the new Skull, that seems like that's going to be the path that she's going to go down. She's going to go down the same path as the previous Skull, who was also a Chase, because apparently becoming a Skull is the only way for somebody working at the DEO to get past their own conscience and be good at their job. So it's kind of a bittersweet ending. It's like Chase is gonna end up losing her morals, likely. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we don't really get a follow up on this. But that was the end of Chase 1 Million. Wasn't too bad. I was kind of expecting this one to be a bit of a dud because, I like the DEO, but not as main characters of an issue. And also there was no Mr. Bones. Instead he was replaced by Skull, who was just a name and not really an actual character. But other than that, I was surprised. It was alright. Especially the stuff with Cheeto and his daughter. I thought that stuff was really interesting. But the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Superboy 1 Million, written by Carl Kessel, the creator of Superboy, and Tom Grummett. So yeah, let's get straight into Superboy issue 1 million, OMAC 1 million and counting. Which I think, because Superboy in this universe, he has OMAC's haircut, so maybe we're going to find out the origins of this Superboy and why he looks like OMAC. He must be related to that character in some way. OMAC is a DC character created by Jack Kirby, I'm pretty sure. And OMAC has kind of become a significant name in the DC universe, probably because he was a Jack Kirby creation. He's most known, the name is most known for being the satellite, I think it was a satellite, that was created by Batman, which was then used by other people to create the OMAC robots, which were used for the wrong purposes and evil purposes and stuff. And so that's what OMAC is known for now. But back in the day, he was just a superhero created by Jack Kirby, who I think was connected to something called Brother Eye, and was and Brother Eye gave him his powers or something like that. I don't know. I'm not gonna say that that's exactly what it is because I'm probably wrong. I don't know a lot about OMAC. But yeah, we're not talking about OMAC, we're talking about Superboy. So yeah, let's find out what happens in this tie-in. Okay, so before we get into the story of this issue, there's a couple of things I want to explain about Superboy in the future to kind of link it to OMAC, because it is revealed in this issue what OMAC has to do with this. So in the future, there are a lot of Superboys. They are members of the Justice Legion S, which is all the Superboys that exist in the future, including the one that we are mostly going to follow. There are two Superboys that we mostly follow in this story. Superboy 1 million, the one from Young Justice 1 million, the one with the mohawk, is got like a big mohawk. And the present Superboy appears in this as well. So the Brother Eye thing comes from the fact that in the future, all of the Superboys are linked together, and they can share their powers with each other through an eye on their forehead. And that's why it's called the Brother's Eye, because they're all brothers, and they often say, like, you know, my brothers and I can share our powers with each other. Get it? Brother's Eye. So yeah, that's the Brother's Eye, how that connection is made in this. So Superboy is flying through the Arctic looking for the headquarters of the Justice League, which is supposed to be the Fortress of Solitude. And while he's in the Arctic, he senses that there's somebody underneath the ice. And so he uses his Brother's Eye to smash the ice into pieces. And when he goes down there, he finds a floating body. And he tries to grab the body. And a couple of other people help him, which are revealed to be Superboys. So Superboy travels to Cadmus, where he meets with the other Superboys, and it's revealed that the person that they saved is the Guardian. I'm not going to say how he traveled to Cadmus. He just teleported there. He went through like a weird portal underwater when he grabbed Guardian and ended up in Cadmus. I'm guessing they went through a Tesseract. That would normally be the explanation in a DC 1 million story. So yeah, they've grabbed the Guardian, who was frozen in the ocean, and the Guardian was a character created by Jack Kirby, because he was working for DC at the time, and he hadn't created Captain America that long before. Like, he'd created Captain America before, and then when he was working for DC, he still wanted to write Captain America, but because he was working for DC, he couldn't do that. So he created the Guardian instead as kind of like a fill-in for Captain America. And then the Guardian eventually became this character in his own right. Jim Harper. So this is very clearly a homage to Captain America, because they find Guardian frozen in the ocean, and he's waking up in the future, and he has no memories. And so, yeah, the Guardian wakes up in the future and immediately tries to attack anyone around him, which is exactly what Captain America does when he wakes up first thing in the Avengers. And Superboy has to calm him down, and he reveals to Guardian where he is and that he is in Cadmus in the future. And then Guardian meets Double X, except in this, like in the future, Double X is known as Million X. Double X works for Cadmus, in cloning and stuff like that. He himself is a clone, a genetic clone. He has like psychic abilities. And so they explain to Guardian where he is, and they say that they want to find out what happened when Justice Legion A traveled back in time to the 20th century, and that they might be able to find out through Guardian's memories because he would have been there. So they connect to Guardian's memories, and they see present-day Cadmus Labs, where present-day Superboy is arriving, and he meets Guardian, and that's when the virus hits the facility and starts taking over everything. And Director Cannon, who is the director of Cadmus, or a director of Cadmus, he wants to find a cure for the virus, and he wants to like put the city in quarantine and stuff. And Guardian's like, you can't do that because Cadmus Labs is supposed to be secret. So if we go out into public and start quarantining everything, people are going to know we exist and we're breaking our own rules. And, you know, I took an oath when I, started working for Cadmus. So he's very similar to Captain America, where, like, he is very loyal to whoever he's working with, you know. And he's not a rule breaker. So, they're like, alright, we'll send Superboy out into public because he's our public agent anyway, and he can see if he can find any clues on how to not only what this virus is, but how to stop it. So Superboy is sent out into public where he gets hit by another wave of the virus. Because what happens is you get hit by the virus and you feel like crap, and then it goes dormant, and then it hits you again in a second wave, and it's presumed that it's going to keep doing that, and then eventually you're going to die. That's the idea. So Superboy meets with future Superman, and it's this point that future Superman reveals that the longer he spends away from his time era, the more he loses his powers. And also, Superboy asks future Superman why his symbol looks nothing like an S, and it's because, apparently, as time goes on, Superman becomes less and less about the symbol, which is why he has no S on his chest, because it's not about the symbol anymore. You don't need that anymore. It's about the person, which I thought was cool. I think that's a cool thing. That's a cool explanation as to why, like, many different Supermen in the future, like, the S just starts to get, like, more and more ridiculous and, like, less S-like, to the point where it's not even an S anymore. It's because the S doesn't really matter in the long run. So Superboy asks Superman from the future if he can have a squiz into the future and see what happens. And Superman from the future is like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll show you what the future looks like. And we get a couple of glimpses at Superboy's future. One interesting glimpse in particular is... Or it's not just his future, it's also the past and stuff. But one interesting glimpse of the future is Impulse and Tim Drake Robin appear on the page. Young Justice hasn't started yet at this point in time, but it's about to. So they were planning on starting Young Justice, so we get our first little look-see at Young Justice, which is really cool. Showing Superboy the future at the same time that Double X was looking into the past causes a temporal vortex in time, which begins sucking Superboy in. So, Superboy 1 million, like future Superboy, uses the Brother Eye. Because he has a connection to all Superboys, he can connect present Superboy to Brother Eye and give him his powers so that present Superboy can pull himself out of the time vortex, which he does. He shoots out of it like a rocket, and it separates them looking like they can't see in the present anymore because it separates them from Guardian's memories. It basically splits up the time travel like memory thing that they were doing, and so we're stuck back in the future with Superboy, Future Guardian, and Million X, or like Superboy, Guardian, and Million X. Being like, we gotta leave it to the guys in the past. It's nothing that we can really do. It's really up to them to figure out how to come up with a cure for this virus that's going around, this Aquaman virus. And in the present, Director Canon believes that they need to reveal to the public that they are trying to come up with a cure for the virus, and that this is the best time for Cadmus to go public, because the public's going to love them, because they're going to try and come up with a way to fix the virus. And Guardian is like, but the public doesn't like genetic research, so they're probably going to hate us. And so they're kind of butting heads, and Guardian is like, look, if this all goes to crap, don't blame me. I warned you. You know, I'm not going to stand by your choices, but I will be watching you. Like, I'll let you do this, but I'm going to be watching. Make sure you don't stuff up. And future Superman is like, the only way we're going to find a cure for the Aquaman virus is if I build an 853rd century computer. So that's what I'm going to do. And he flies off to go and build an 853rd century computer. And Guardian then turns to Superboy after Superboy is like, you know, you're acting a little paranoid, Guardian. The Mixter's plan sounds okay to me. It's worth a try, right? I mean, things couldn't get any worse. And Guardian's just like, if I've learned one lesson in life, son, is that things can always get worse. And so yeah, that's the end of the tie-in. And I will say, I really like that tie-in. Very wordy, but I enjoyed it. Very good tie-in There's a lot of dialogue I skipped over because when explaining what happens in it, it's just not important. But if you like Superboy, I would recommend to check it out as one of those tie-ins that, if you're reading DC 1 Million, it's a good tie-in. I like it, especially if you like Guardian, especially if you like things that are like tributing to Jack Kirby. But yeah, the next time we're going to be talking about is Aquaman 1 Million, and this is actually the final tie-in we're going to be talking about today. So let's get straight into it. It's written by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. Dan Abnett would end up writing Aquaman, like 20 years after this, in 2016? No, wait, 18 years. 18 years after this, Dan Abnett would become the main writer on Aquaman. Isn't that funny? That, like, he writes Aquaman in 1998, and then he goes on to write Aquaman in 2016. That's really interesting. Obviously, he's working alongside Andy Lanning, who is... they've worked together, most notably on Guardians of the Galaxy. They created what is today known as the most notable version of Guardians of the Galaxy. With art by Tom Greenberg and Bill Anderson. So yeah, let's get straight into this. So Aquaman 1 Million is pretty straightforward, pretty standard for one of these 1 million tie-ins. Like, it's not too complicated or anything. Aquaman, the one that we know, Arthur Curry, ends up in the future version of Atlantis, which is on Neptune in the future. And he meets this fish robot called Pilot, who is supposed to be like his little tourist to help him around. He's talking about how, like, you know, Aquaman is treated like a god in Neptune and stuff, and everyone praises him and worships him. And Aquaman is just like, whoa, people worship me? That's crazy. I can barely wrap my head around the fact that I'm in the future. So he arrives in Atlantis, and he starts meeting citizens in Atlantis, and then he meets who Tempest is in the future. So Tempest, in the 853rd century, is a woman. And she looks a lot like Dolphin. So it's presumed that in the present, Tempest and Dolphin are together. At least where I am in my reading of, like, Titans and stuff. Tempest and Dolphin are together. They've just had a baby. It's presumed that this is supposed to be, like, their descendant. So Aquaman's thing is that he has to do a challenge for the coming of Superman. But it's not really a challenge. He just kind of puts on a show. Like, it's supposed to be a challenge, but there is no challenge. The challenge is for Aquaman to just show off his abilities. So he just swims around and controls fish and whales. And he's just talking about how great he feels just swimming around, having people praise him and stuff. He's like, I feel awesome, yeah! And then something comes out of the a tesseract nearby Atlantis. Some giant tentacles come out, and it turns out that it's a kraken that has been sent to Neptune from a different planet to start causing chaos in Atlantis. Dolphin senses this with her abilities. She can sense that there's something coming and that it's death. And that's when the kraken attacks and starts destroying everything. Aquaman tries to stop it. He finds out that because it's from another planet, it can't survive in these waters, so it's thrashing around out of panic and survival. And just like the Superman situation, they all believe that Aquaman was responsible for this, but it doesn't make any sense. They're just assuming that. There's no evidence that Aquaman is a traitor. At least in the Superman tie-in, specifically, Solaris tricked Superman into accidentally hurting people. Like, he deflected Superman's abilities, he altered Superman's abilities so that he was accidentally hurting the audience, so it did look like Superman was trying to hurt people. But in this case, Aquaman was just there. He even tried to help, like he was trying to help, and they just assumed it was him. Like, Dolphin is just like, you are a traitor, I'm gonna try to kill you. And so she tries to kill Aquaman, and then immediately after she tries to kill Aquaman, Pilot is like, wait a minute, like, I'll show you, like, I've got footage of Aquaman trying to help us. And so Dolphin just feels like a massive idiot. She's like, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I thought Aquaman was a traitor. Well, Dolphin, that's why you shouldn't assume things. Otherwise, you just end up with egg on your face. So she's like, I'm sorry, Aquaman. I know you were trying to just help us. And so Aquaman and Pilot go off on a little journey to find these things that are like vast intelligence, like, yeah, ancient intelligences. It's apparently like these reefs that can talk and communicate. So they go and find them, and Aquaman communicates with them and asks them if they can send out a signal of peace and tranquility throughout the ocean in hopes that that will quell the raging Kraken so that they can send it back to the planet that it came from. And they listen. They're just like, yeah, we love you, Aquaman. You're cool. And so, you came to save us. And so, and you asked us nicely. And so they use their powers to calm the Kraken, and the Kraken is sent back to its home planet. The only way that they can do that is by, instead of, I guess, like, they could have just sent it back through the Tesseract that it came through, but I guess that Tesseract closed off. So they just get these giant flying jellyfish ships to carry it to its planet. And then Aquaman is told by Dolphin that they've received a summoning to Jupiter for Aquaman to the Legion HQ. And so Aquaman is like, alright, I better go to Jupiter then and see what this summoning's all about. Maybe I'm reuniting with my friends and my team. And that's where it ends. It ends with Aquaman saying that he's going to go and meet at the Legion headquarters on Jupiter, and we'll find out what happens with that. Probably I'm guessing in DC 1 million issue 3. But that's going to be it for this episode, because that's the final tie-in that we're going to be covering today. I hope you enjoyed DC 1 million this week, part 2. We did nothing but tie-ins this week, but I think there were a lot of good tie-ins. I think even though this episode didn't cover any of the main issues of DC 1 million, I would hope that it was still an enjoyable episode, because I think a lot of these tie-ins were pretty fun, especially the Azrael one. That was really good. Superboy one was pretty good. Overall, so far, tie-ins have been above average for DC 1 million. I'm finally getting to DC events where the tie-ins aren't that bad. Like, I remember reading Genesis and being like, tie-ins aren't that bad. Or, some of the 0 Hour tie-ins are like, not that bad. But yeah, next week we're going to be continuing DC 1 million, and, yeah, that episode is going to be starting off with the Wonder Woman, tie-in. So just know that the next episode of DC 1 million will be starting off with Wonder Woman 1 million. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. So I hope to see you next week, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have a good one.